Hey everybody, welcome to Unscripted, where we're all about inspiring better conversations and helping people think more critically and deeply about faith, life, and leadership. My name is Sam, and I'm here today with our third special guest in a row, Pastor Erica.
Hi,
How are
Sam.
you?
I'm really good. I'm a little
Awesome.
nervous, I got to be honest.
I guess I get that, right? Like you're sitting there and like you maybe know kind of like the topic we're talking about, but you don't know any of the questions, and so who knows what I could ask you today.
Who knows,
Who
Sam?
knows exactly? All right, so for starters, like it's the week of Easter, and as many of you know, Mike wasn't feeling so hot a little bit ago, so we're letting him focus on the sermon for this weekend, which is Easter, and it's awesome. So he is dead focused on making that awesome, and we are so excited about the fact that's it. So you are pinch hitting, and
Yes.
I'm really excited about it because the thing that we're going to talk about today is something that I know you care a lot about. And I think you're interested in, and you've maybe had this be something that you've thought a lot about yourself. So here's I'm just gonna like set the field for us, all right?
Okay.
I don't know if that's the right phrase, but I'm just gonna set the scene. That's the one. All right, I'm gonna set the scene. So here we are, and we're Holy Week, and this will actually go out, and people will be able to watch this as of Thursday morning. Thursday would be Maundy Thursday, which is the day of the Last Supper, Jesus washing feet, Jesus doing the wine and the bread, that whole thing. And then Friday is Good Friday, Jesus on the cross, and then we wait for Sunday to celebrate Easter. So this is a big week. It's a holy week. And I'm curious about something for you. Curious if you could answer this question for me. I'm curious for you if you think that it matters whether or not we actually experience Easter rather than just attend Easter. Does it matter that we experience it?
Well, I think of course it matters, but the experience makes it such a life-altering moment or event for us if we allow it to.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, I guess I'll start by saying I grew up always going to church Monday, Thursday, going to church Good Friday at noon. And once I started in ministry, I was always helping lead those services a lot of the times. And then when I worked at my old church, I would always be in charge of the sunrise service on Easter Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And I'd fill in
grew up
at
doing
other
that.
churches, like sunrise. You'd go out and sometimes you'd even watch the sunrise. So I grew up with these traditions, so to speak, with it. But even in the midst of that, you can miss the experience.
Yeah, for sure. So there's this book I've read a while back, but it's kind of stuck with me. There's this guy named Rich Villodas who talks about the deeply formed life, which was a really interesting book. But in it, he talks about these three things, like in different parts of Christianity, like there's different areas of it, and they focus on different things. One group kind of focuses on right action, like doing the right things. Another area focuses on right knowledge, like knowing the right things and making sure you're lined up theologically with things. And then this other area talks about having right experience. So like experiencing things the right way, this emotion, this feeling. So you're kind of talking about like having this special time leading up to Easter. Does it matter that we have like an emotional response? Like why should we have this emotional response as we like go into Easter?
Okay, well, I feel like it's like anything else. So if I would tell you right here, I have decaf coffee in this cup and tell you everything about it, how it was made, explain to you what it tastes like from my own point of view, but you never actually get a taste of it yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have the experience of what this would be like to actually feel it in your mouth and go down into your stomach and all of the things. And I think a lot of times for people, faith can be that way. We have a lot of knowledge about things, but we don't take time to be still and to stop and to listen and to actually feel God and know God at the core of who we are. We know him, but sometimes we miss the actual knowing. And for this week, if you've been a Christian for a long time, the story is not new.
No, it's not.
It's seemingly, we know it. We can probably walk through it just sitting here today without even reading it. And so I think it's important to obviously read it. And I find great value in watching The Passion movie, The Passion of the Christ.
Yeah, you showed some clips from your sermon this last weekend, and I had forgotten how graphic that is. And
There's
how
something
emotional
about that.
is. Yeah.
That takes it from a story to, oh my gosh, like I can't believe the suffering. And I always think, I've heard before, like if you were the only person on the earth, you would have done it just for me. And that's like, it gets me every time to think, and he did it willingly. You know, he could have turned away. He could have denied who he was. And so many times he could have done so many things, but he didn't.
Okay. So this is the question behind the question.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a number of us have at some point in our lives maybe had this emotional experience where we get to that place. And when I say that place, what I'm meaning is there's this spot in our soul, in our heart, whatever you want to call it, where we just can't help but be overcome by this story. And I had that moment a number of times as a kid, but as I've gotten older, the moment comes fewer and fewer times. Because I think that you've rehearsed it so much, and personally, as this is kind of my role as a pastor, to explain this to people, it becomes, in my mind, so important to help other people get there to that place and experience that, but I don't always take the time to do it for myself. And so I'm curious, like how do you not let the story grow cold or old or whatever? I'm curious, what is it? How do you get to that place? How have you gotten to that place?
For me, I am a big meditator.
Sure.
So I meditate a lot. And I'm very intentional about my meditations a lot of times. So this week, for example, I'm very intentional about what I sort of ask God to reveal to me during my meditations. And some people, basically meditation is basically prayer. That's what it is. It's when you just kind of quiet your life and you just kind of sit and you just allow your thoughts to come and go. And if you can get good at it, you can eventually stop thinking and just be. And for me, that's when God shows me things and shows up in different ways. And so I meditate with a purpose in this week. And every day is different. I go through the story the way he did, and every day is a little different. So it's hard to explain. It's like one of those things, like you almost have to experience it to do it. The very first time I was led on a guided meditation, it was by a nun.
Really?
Uh-huh.
I'm just going to say this really quick. Like the word meditate itself
Mm-hmm.
is used countless times in the Bible to talk about what you should do for God's words. So I just want to say that because some people it gets like weird, kind of voodoo.
Yeah, some people think it's like new age and
But it's actually like a deeply Christian thing to like take time and meditate on who God is and to learn about who he is through this process of like actually slowing down, thinking about him and meditating on his words and like having those things sink in deeper. So I just want to say that because that's amazing that one of the first times you meditated was from a nun. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I never knew it, that you could be guided in such a way like that. I used to go sometimes to monastery, to like the nunnery, and like spend a day there. And so I do different things with different nuns, and they would teach me things, and I just found it super valuable. But I think...
Can I stop you there just for a second? Because that's super interesting. How did you find it valuable? Because I think some people are like, that's a waste of time. Like, it's not productive in any sense. You're not getting anything accomplished. Like, we live in a world where accomplishment is what matters. So how is it actually valuable?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I look at these women who give their entire life to God. And in a sense, they're married to Jesus in their minds. They even wear like rings. And they devote their entire being to serving God in whatever context. You know, some look like me or not you, obviously.
They don't look like me.
They just wear normal clothes and you wouldn't even know that they're a nun, you know, but they literally live every day serving God. And that's amazing to me. And in fact, like when I was going to see them, you know, once a month or something, there were times when I thought to myself, I don't mean this, you might think I'm crazy, but I thought to myself, wow, if I didn't have kids or a family, how I'd be able to serve them that much more.
Totally.
It gave me insight into that of like, that's a hindrance in some ways. Mm-hmm. Obviously being a mom and all of that is serving God and stuff too. But it was so valuable because it gave me an insight into faith that I didn't have. The meditation and the guided prayer that they led me through. And like one time I had a massage from a nun, and as she was giving me,
you gotta make it, and that's just not something I would have ever expected. Tell me more about this.
It's literally like you're at like a spa sort of, but you're at this nun has, that's what she does. It's her ministry.
Okay.
And music on just like you're at a normal spa. But as like she's massaging my hands, she's praying over me and she's saying,
oh man,
God, thank you for all the ways that you have used these hands so far. And I pray for the ways they're about to be used. Same with my feet, same with my legs. It was amazing. It was so valuable. Like, and I think we just don't take the time to learn from others in certain different denominations and things we maybe are a little bit fearful of. Mm-hmm. But I find so much value in exploring that because in my experience, it's taught me so much.
Yeah. Yeah. So this goes back to right doing, right thinking, and right experience. And I think when we find ourselves in like a very particular corner of that, mm-hmm. those three things, we can miss the broader beauty of everything, right? Like the broader fullness of a full Christian life. Yeah. And so I love how you're open to that, but then you don't feel like it's threatening to your faith. Like you know who Jesus is, and you don't need to have these theological discussions before opening yourself up to learning what God has to teach you from somebody who's different than you.
For sure.
That's really cool.
You know what I want to say too, I think before you can have the experience like really inside of you, you have to be sure that you know who God is and like you know who he is, but more importantly than that, you have to know who he says you are.
Yeah.
Because sometimes so much of us, we're like searching for truth all the time. And I think instead of searching for truth, we need to remove the lies. Okay. Because sure. I think a lot of times that hinders us. We think, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm this or I'm that. And we hold on to this deception that isn't true according to God. You know, there's perfect love casts out all fear, and we are washed as white as snow, and to see ourselves the way he does makes the experience so much more valuable and able to be had. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, it makes sense. But I want to push on that just a little bit because I'm curious about something. For me, the process of going through this Easter week, or this Holy Week, specifically on Friday, growing up in a more traditional church and having those kinds of experiences, for me, there's this moment, especially on Friday, where I think to myself, I'm not worthy. Mm. Like, I'm not worthy of this gift. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, I can relate to this only because before I gave my sermon on Sunday, I was feeling that way. I was in the back of the worship center singing the worship songs, and lies started coming into my brain. Lies that the world has led me to believe. And so I took a minute and I went into my office and I got down on my knees, and that's exactly what I said to God. I said, I am not worthy to give this message to your people. I know that. If there's anything inside of me that needs cleansing, or there's anything that is not glorifying to you, forgive me for it now. And that's an amazing place to be with God, to be humble and to be grateful and to not think that we are worthy. But yet our humanness sometimes takes over, but yet when we can come to God in those ways, he blows us out of the water. At least for me. Like, who am I to stand up on a stage and teach someone God's word? Who am I? And the fact that he trusts me to do it, and when I'm up there, some of the things that come out of my mouth, they are not from me. It's only him. And that's it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, if he can use me, he can use anybody. That's just the truth.
I totally hear that. I feel the same way. There's something just in the speaking side of it. Like, you can either get up there and say, I'm all that, and a bag of chips, and feel real good about yourself. And then what normally happens whenever I'm in that place, I fall real flat on my face.
Yeah.
But when I'm not that, and I have a simple prayer. I don't tell many people this, but now y'all know. Before I go up on stage, I've done this for years. It just kind of happened. I just repeat over and over, your words, God, not mine. Your words, God, not mine. And I just say that and like kind of just repeat it in my head so that I get to the place where I know that I want him to be the one speaking through me.
Yeah.
And it just helps change my perspective as I go up there.
Yeah. I see something similar too in that help them to see you, not me.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's.
So I want to circle back just a little bit. You talked about not feeling worthy and yet you feel worthy, right? Like there's this weird balance. Like I feel very much not worthy of the love that Jesus gives on the cross. And I think that's an important thing to experience, to put yourself in those shoes. Like when you say you watch The Passion or when you really reflect on the graphicness of the biblical account and what it says happens. I mean, they're insane. I mean, the lashes, the crown of thorns, the guards who basically just beat the snot out of him and mock worship him. And then the cross. I mean, all these things, when you like really think about those things, you don't feel worthy of that. I don't.
Right.
But then how do you make the shift? Like why is this such a important thing to feel and experience?
Well, I think I talked about it in my sermon a little bit. For me, it helps to relate Jesus' suffering to some of the suffering that I've had to endure in this life.
Yeah.
And I think for so many people, when they experience God for the first time, it's during those moments. It's those moments when life just knocks the wind out of you, and sometimes God is all that's there. And so for me to relate it to my own life and to realize that I too am made in God's image, just like Jesus was, and I too am the light of the world, just like Jesus was, and I too can be loved just like he was. He's human just like I was, or just like he's human just like I am. And to remember that, and to just try to do my best to live this life, and even in the worst times, to remember that God is in control and that I'm not. It's not easy, but it helps me. It helps me get to that place and that appreciation differently, to relate it to my own suffering.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, you're talking about the humanness of Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Like why, how do we like experience that? I mean, when I think about the humanness of Jesus, it changes the whole thing. Sometimes I think of him as God that's like untouchable and like all knowing, now all powerful, here in human form. And so this must not have really hurt, right? This must not have really been something that you had to struggle through. And yet when I like take the time to think about his last week and the special time he spent with his disciples, and the fact that he did all that he did and then experienced this crazy pain, like the humanness of him. We were talking about this just a little bit ago. I mean, this is a thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, when he came in on the donkey for Palm Sunday and everyone's cheering, the Bible says that he cried before that because he knew, you know, he knew all the while what was going to happen. And even I was talking to Natasha for a second before we started here today, and she's giving the message to the youth kids this week. And she was saying about, can you just imagine the Last Supper? Imagine with your own family, this is the last time you're going to share a meal with them. Just think of that for a second. If that doesn't humble you and that doesn't bring you to a place of the most fear, and you can't even imagine what that would be like. And he did it. Yeah. All the while knowing that this family, there are people that were going to turn their backs on him too. Yeah. There's so much to it. You know, there's so many pieces to it. And within each piece, I think it's just imagining that was you for a second, taking the time to put yourself in his shoes and try to feel what it must have felt like. You know, I used to watch, like, it's kind of weird, but like documentaries of people on death row, you know, where they get like their last meal and like they lead you, like they walk them down the hall and they strap in and and you just can't help.
That, by the way?
I know, but it puts like, you try to imagine that as yourself, and it's just so overwhelming. And I think we can do the same thing with the story, is do our best to put ourselves in his shoes, and then it becomes an experience.
Okay. Right there. You talk about that, putting yourself in his shoes, and you experience the maybe horror of it, awfulness, the weight of it all. What does that do to you? Like, people right now love to watch movies and TV shows that are deeply disturbing. Like, they'll get an emotional response out of it, and they get to feel it, and there's almost pleasure in that. There's this odd pleasure. But why do we this is just, I'm just wanting to talk about it with you, so you don't have to have the right answer, but why do you think that it matters that we put ourselves there? What does it do to us?
Well, I think when we're watching these disturbing shows, that's exactly what we're doing. We're imagining that we're in it.
Yeah.
And so it takes it from being a TV show to being like, wow, what if this was me?
Yeah.
And I think it matters because it becomes more than a story then.
Yeah.
And Easter becomes an actual celebration. Like, we can't even celebrate enough. Like, when Jesus died, we died too. And because of his death, there's nothing that can separate us from God anymore. That's amazing.
It's incredible.
That, like, even just saying that out loud gives me goosebumps and makes me want to scream and shout, yet cry at the same time. Like, it is, people say, oh, it's the good news, but it's the good news. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Exactly. So that's it, right? Like, so as we go into this weekend, to take the time to put yourself there, and because this is it, like, you have to experience the lows to experience the highs. You have to, like, go to that place of deep disturbance at what an awful thing had to happen in order to experience just how incredible Jesus' victory over death is. Like, it helps you then realize, like, he's alive. Like, he's alive. That's nuts. That's crazy. Like, that is so crazy. And so if you want to experience Easter in the powerful way, you have to experience and think about what happens on Friday.
That's right. It's the same for us. I mean, it's in our darkest valleys. The mountaintops wouldn't be as good if we can't look below and see where we've come. The mountaintops don't feel as good, and they're not as much to be celebrated. But when we can look down and see the valley and remember what it was like to be in the valley, then the mountaintop blows your mind to think that we've come that far,
Yeah.
And I think this is similar to that, in that, I mean, we're already seated with God up there because of what Jesus did. We have to do nothing. I mean, yes, we have to continue to try to be like him and whatever, but it's done already.
Yeah, God sees you differently because of him. And if you accept it, like, you literally are viewed differently.
Yeah.
Okay. I like thinking about this kind of stuff. It helps me, like, picture it and feel it and experience it. But what I want to get at is, maybe there are people who have never really experienced Easter like the celebration that it is, right? Mm-hmm. They've had kind of a normal life, had some ups and downs, but nothing too crazy. And there's not this awareness of the need for Easter, right? Like, there's no, like, excitement about needing to be saved from something to something. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, like, isn't there just this, I want to ask you, like, as you think about that person, and they've kind of been captivated by church and Jesus, and kind of, like, wondered at the mystery of him, and maybe even said, like, hey, I want to follow you, Jesus, with my life, and I'm kind of trying to make those normal steps and done those kinds of things. What would you tell that person? Like, what would you say, hey, here's how you can experience Easter in a powerful way for yourself this year, even if you've never really experienced it powerfully before? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is, God says in the Bible, knock and the door will be opened, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find.
Yeah.
I think it starts with the ask, is asking God to show up for you and asking God to help you to see it the way he intends you to. But that also means taking time to step off your own egotistical self and stop focusing so much on your own life and just be still and allow him to speak to you too. And that's hard for a lot of people. They don't know how to do that. You know, and it's not complicated. You just ask God, I'm going to give you the next 2 minutes. Help me to see you and help me to feel you in this time. You might walk away from the 2 minutes thinking that was a total waste of time. Maybe, but maybe not. Keep coming back because he promises he's going to show up. And I think he will. And I think if you're a brand new Christian or you're not even sure if you are a Christian, read the story. Before you read, ask God to help you see yourself in it and try to relate it to different times in your life, you know, and realize that you can live as close as you can to heaven on earth every single day. It's all how you think about your life. That's the key for Jesus for me, is the perspective that his death gives me in living every day.
Say that again. So you can live as close to heaven. Say that again for me.
The kingdom of heaven is here right now.
Definitely.
It's available to every person. This is what Jesus came to show us. Yes, we have eternity with God if we believe in Jesus. That's true. But the basis of the story of Jesus's life is that we can experience heaven every day because we have God and because we can stay connected to him. And through the ups and downs that life throws at us, it's that connection and that perspective, that heavenly perspective that can keep us in check, you know, and that can help us sort of be in the world, but not of it.
Yeah.
It's not easy though. It's not easy. I mean, it's a narrow road.
Yeah.
And the Bible says not very many people find it because it's hard.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly not perfect by any means. There are certainly days when, you know, I'm in the world more than I'm in with God. But on those times when I am at my best, I have experienced heaven here. And it's unbelievable, really.
Okay. There's so many tangents we could go off of right now. And I like it. So I'm going to go on one tangent and then I want to go back to one more thing that I want to get for people. The thing that I want to get for people, so stay tuned. If you've been a Christian for a long time and you have maybe felt a little bit cold, I want to talk about that, like how to break that coldness to like experiencing worship or experiencing God in a new way or experiencing Easter and actually feeling it. Because I think that feeling really is important. I think it changes you. I think it transforms you. So we're going to get to that in a second. But first,
okay,
I want to go off of what you just said because there's something about it. I mean, what Jesus experienced going on the road to the cross, he was able to take those steps by staying lined up with what his Father wanted him to do. So like he was like all the way, like not my will, your will, God, not my will, your will, God, every step of the way. And I think that's a good picture of what like you just talked about. Like, you can be going through the most awful things and still experience heaven, but that's such a weird thing for people to think about. And it's not this like sicky happy thing.
Right.
It's like a joy. It's not like sugary sweet. It's like savory and meaty and good. You know what I mean?
It's like contentment. It's contentment in whatever circumstances that you're in. It's that the trust that no matter what, you're going to be okay.
What do you mean by okay?
Well, let's say, hypothetically speaking, we're talking about a cancer diagnosis, okay?
Yeah.
That's scary. And your mind fills with fear, or even a potential cancer, you know, or health scare. Your mind fills with fear. You think about the worst of the worst, how you could suffer, you know, all of the things your body might go through, and inevitably, possibly even death, you know? But when we believe in Jesus, death is victory for us, right?
Yeah.
But when we're living here, and I'm going to be 43 years old and I would get that diagnosis, I don't know that I could say that, but this is the narrow road, you know? It's the narrow road to believe that no matter what we go through, we're going to be just fine because God has already been there. He's going to go where we're going and he's going to be with us until the end, and the victory waits for us at the end. But we can get the victory here and now. It's all a matter of how we think about it.
You can live the victory.
Yeah. Easier said than done.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. Easier
Awesome.
said than done.
I wanted to go on that tangent for a little bit because I don't think we necessarily always talk about that. And I think it's a really incredible mindset to have. And it changes everything about how you live. And it makes like the difficult times bearable. And it's been a tough year. So like,
Yeah.
the more we can do that kind of stuff, the better.
I mean, I think another thing too, just is be present. Be present where you are. I remember when my grandma was dying, we all knew she was dying. Those moments with her were crazy good. But imagine that mindset in our everyday. It turns every day into something beautiful. And we forget that.
Yeah.
We forget it. But to just be present, play with your kids and enjoy them, and don't think about the dishes sometimes and the homework, but be there. Really be there, and be there with your spouse and look them in the eye instead of thinking about maybe what you need to do or what you should be doing or what you'd rather be doing.
Yeah.
You know, be present in life.
It's to see the gifts right in front of you.
Yeah, because we all have so many. And give. Give to people. Go out of your way to give, and you will experience Jesus. Period. Without a doubt, 100%.
Yeah. This is super interesting because we have a new series coming. And that's like a beautiful little picture of what we're going to be talking about. That's really good. It's going to be awesome. Okay. You said one thing that brings us right into this final question I have for you. And that's this. When you are present, you're able to experience something more. Mm-hmm. So say, for example, I'm a random person who's been attending church a long time, call myself a Christian, but I just don't feel like I used to. Like I walk in and yeah, it's great music and I'm happy to be here and see people, but it's just not, it doesn't mean what it once meant. I know the story is meaningful. I know it's changed my life. I know it's changed everything. And yet I just have been too busy, been too full of life. I've been too like monotonous. How do I get to that place of experiencing Easter and being able to celebrate? And we've talked about some of those things already, but I'm curious, like, what you would say to somebody like that.
I'd say stop thinking so much about yourself.
Huh.
Find someone in your life that needs something that you can give. A meal, a shoulder, a conversation, whatever it could be, and go out of your way to do it 1, 2, 3 times this week. And ask God to be in it with you and ask him to show up in those moments. And I would guess that you're going to have a renewed sense of who God is and what he created you to do for him. Now, mind you, you should still be still. Maybe watch the Passion Story, read it from your Bible. Ask God to show up for you if you've been a Christian for a long time. But if you've been a Christian for a long time and you're getting bored with it, that's on you. That's on you.
How do you mean that?
In that, step out of yourself then and do things for others, and your life will change. Look at all the good you have. Write it down if you have to. Start by thanking God and ask him to open your eyes to all of the things that he's blessed you with in your life. I don't know how you cannot get out of your lukewarm state if you do that.
I think that's really good. One thing I'm going to add just ever so slightly, because I think that's the perfect picture. But when you're doing things for others, I think it helps me when I start to see other people's need for God, and I can be a part of providing that. Like, yeah. It's just a little switch where I often look at my own life and I'm like thinking of my own needs, but when I start to see other people's needs and like become aware of the way that God might use me to work in their life, that just changes it, and I somehow become a vehicle. Mm-hmm. And then I feel like God works through me, and that's crazy. Like, there's a difference there. And you becoming aware of other people's needs and you becoming aware of how God can use you, I think does change it.
Yeah, I always have this saying in myself, be Jesus with skin to someone.
Huh. Yeah.
Do your best to be Jesus with skin. Now, I've had moments in my life where I'm like, oh, they were Jesus with skin to me.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to be for someone else.
This is fun. I have one more question. Last question. Um, you've had a week. I mean, you started off this week talking about and you gave the sermon and talked all about starting at walking in with a party, and you ended basically with a cross and how there's hope still. How has doing that and like going into this Easter made this Easter meaningful for you?
It's been humbling, and it's been a gift for me to be able to write that kind of a sermon. And it puts you in a place with God that if you didn't have to write that kind of a sermon, maybe you wouldn't get to that place, kind of thing. The other thing too, I was telling you a little bit earlier, is I love the Passion of the Christ movie. I think there's so much value in watching it. It brings the story to life. And there's this interview with Jim Caviezel, the guy who played Jesus. I would encourage, just Google it, interview with Jim Caviezel, The Passion of the Christ. And what he talks about in the interview, I think, is super true. He became Jesus to the best he could as he played the character of Jesus. And in the midst of that, he suffered and he went through so many things, but God showed up. And he not only showed up for him, but he showed up for everyone around. Everyone on that set experienced God in ways that they just couldn't even dream. And I think that's true for all of us too. If we can live our life and do our best to be devoted to God, and throughout our days be connected with him in conversation all day long, he's going to show up for us too. And we're going to make a difference for the people around us without even knowing it. And that's the beauty of God and how he can use us. And it's not hard. It's not hard in that. Just be you. Be you. And let God use you as you. Don't think about it so much. We think about it, we try too hard. Or we think it's this, I'm not worthy, I'm not this, na. But Sam, there's only you. There's only one Sam Prowitz, and no one else will ever be Sam Prowitz. So be Sam Prowitz and be proud of that Sam Prowitz, and know that Sam Prowitz has a mission here that only you can achieve. Because God made it that way. I don't know how, but that's amazing to me.
I think that's really great. There's only one Erica, so.
I know.
Right. Especially spelled with an A. I mean, just.
That's just weird. Don't ever do that to your kids. Don't ever spell their name weird.
This has been awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time and just talking through this lead up to Easter. I'm really excited about celebrating Easter here. It's going to be so much fun. We're deep in the planning, deep in the practice of it all, making it all happen. So I can't wait for that. But in the meantime, I hope this message, if you're listening, was meaningful to you. I hope that it helped you get to a place where you can really experience Easter for yourself and celebrate and feel it and know it to be true for you personally and for us as a church family. And with that said, happy Easter to you. Happy Holy Week. And I will see you all again next week.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Erica.